I'm back to continue my discussion on the Scott Peterson murder case. This involves his wife, Lacey, who he was convicted of murdering in December of 2002 when she was 8 months pregnant with their son, Connor. During the last video, I talked about that pivotal morning of Christmas Eve, the night before and the morning of. The police say that she was killed the evening of the 23rd. Scott's story is that he spent the whole morning with her on the morning of the 24th on Christmas Eve before he went fishing. So where I left off in my last video, please go back and watch them if you haven't yet, but we left off where both stories had converged, and it was about 11:15 in the morning, and Scott was driving to the marina with his boat. Now, again, the police believe that she was killed the night before. So everything that happened that morning was just Scott's effort to mastermind an alibi, right? The TV show, the computer searches, the mop bucket, the curling iron, like everything that happened in that home that morning, or that Scott claimed happened in that house that morning, was just him trying to build an alibi to pretend his wife was there that morning at home, when the police believe she was actually dead since the night before. They believe Scott took Lacey, wrapped her up in a tarp, and put her in the back of his pickup truck, which was backed up to the house. He put her body in the truck, drove to the warehouse, got his boat, and then went out to the Berkeley Marina and then dumped her body in the San Francisco Bay. They know for a fact that he arrived at 12:54 p.m. because he had a parking ticket from the marina that was time-stamped. When they asked, like they always do when you say, "Where were you?" And he said, "Well, I was at the marina." They say, "Well, did anybody see you?" And he goes, "I got a parking ticket." They found that to be a little bit suspicious. That was just too convenient, too quick to hand that over. It was almost as if he had specifically taken a trip to the marina to build an alibi. Scott has left the marina by 2:15 because he leaves a voicemail for his wife at 2:15. Now, in the voicemail, he says, "I tried to call you at the house, kind of trying you here too." So in his story is that she had said she was going to spend some time that afternoon walking the dog and going shopping and doing other stuff that day. So by calling the house first, she didn't answer. He then called her voicemail, assuming she was out somewhere. At 3:25, he stops to get gas, but he doesn't have a receipt for that, which was also found suspicious. And then at 3:52, he calls her again, but this time he does not leave a voicemail. According to Scott, he arrives home between 4:30 and 4:45 and puts some clothes in the laundry, and he takes a shower. That will later turn out to be a very suspicious behavior as well, because he didn't even wander around the house to say hello to his wife. He just went straight upstairs, put clothes in the wash, got in the shower. And then when he gets out of the shower, he discovers his wife's not home. The next part of the police side of the story, is that at 5:47 p.m., Lacey's stepfather, Ron, calls 911, and he says that he's been informed by his son-in-law that his daughter is missing and that she went out to walk the dog and she never came back. There are a few of them that all meet at this park where they think she might be, so they're all out kind of looking for her. Scott had also gone to some neighbors' homes to see if he could find her. The police arrive at 6:10, and they say to Scott, "Hey, can we go back to your house?" And he voluntarily allows the police to go back to his house to search his house. The police immediately notice that there's a lot of things that Lacey would have left behind, like her purse, her keys, her phone, her jewelry. There's no sign of forced break-in. There is no sign of any type of a struggle that has taken place in the house. There is no blood evidence. There is nothing amiss, meaning it doesn't look like anybody ransacked the house. Everything is in its place. This does not look like a crime scene. However, the police are somewhat immediately suspicious of Scott, and they always are of the husband, by the way. Every single situation, if you're a husband, get ready. But they're immediately suspicious of him. Early reports are that he's distraught, but that he's unusually distraught. It might be kind of faking, like those alligator tears, acting too distraught that they became suspicious. The police later testified that they almost immediately suspected him, and that they notified the homicide division that this might be something. Later that evening, the police asked Scott to come into the police station to make a formal statement. He does. they ask him if he would, just for the purpose of eliminating him as a suspect, would he be willing to take a polygraph? He says, yes, I would be willing to do that. That's all on tape. He did go ahead and consent to that. Now, before he had a chance to take the polygraph, his father talked him out of it. But Scott originally was very forthcoming. He said, yeah, if that's what you need, I'll take a polygraph. In the beginning, the police felt Scott was very cooperative. Now here's a look at it from the defense side of things. So if Scott had put Lacey's body in the tarp and in the back of his truck, I want to show you a picture really quick. This is an actual picture of Scott's truck and the boat. Now I want to call your attention to the truck first. This is not like an extended truck bed. This is a shorter truck bed, and you can see he's got like a little toolkit or something here. So there's very little space. Lacey's only 5 foot tall, but she couldn't possibly fit stretched out flat, like a rolled up rug, either this way or that way. Like she just couldn't fit there. So we would have had to kind of curl her around like U-shaped or like in fetal position to fit her back there, at least at my first look. That's what I would see. Now, the trouble with him killing her the night before is that rigor mortis starts to kick in at about 2 to 4 hours. So if it had been literally about 6 to 8 to even 10 hours before he took her out of the house and into the truck, when the neighbor saw him loading umbrellas, was he really loading Lacey? That's a possibility. It would have been more difficult to wedge her in there. And then this is the boat, and you can see from the boat, and you might want to blow this up a little bit, but you can see this boat isn't very deep. And again, if she's kind of a bigger bundle, wouldn't anybody have seen that sticking up, the tarp sticking up out of the boat? There were witnesses at the marina that said they saw Scott that day. And there was one that said he helped him launch his boat, because it is one of those where you got to drive the boat like down a ramp. You take the boat off and float it out to the water, tie it up. It's easier with 2 people. So there was someone that helped him launch his boat that day. And that guy says he didn't see anything in the boat. And it would have been pretty obvious if there'd been a big blue round tarp stuffed something in that boat. That guy didn't testify in court because the defense attorney, told him he wouldn't be needed, because the defense attorney probably thought not that he needed extra evidence for the defense, but he probably thought the prosecution had no physical evidence. Meanwhile, that day back in the neighborhood, between the time that Scott left at 9:50 and for the rest of the day before he returned home, during that morning time, there were between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning, there were 13 different witnesses that said that they saw a pregnant woman walking a dog. And she fit Lacey's description. She was short, dark-haired, and she was walking a golden retriever. So unless there's just a bumper crop of short, pregnant women with golden retrievers in this neighborhood walking the same route that Lacey had been known to walk, one of the witnesses said, it wasn't just a pregnant lady. I know Lacey, and it was Lacey. Now, these witnesses all came forward. They all called the police. They called the tip line, some of them over and over, and the police didn't run down any of these leads. None of them got spoken to by the police. And if they did, the police discounted their stories. And even if her dead body had been wrapped in that tarp, let's consider that for a minute. The police confiscated that tarp. There was no blood, no sweat, no DNA, no skin, no hair, no fabric fibers. None of that was found on the tarp. They didn't find anything in his truck. They didn't find anything in the boat. They did find in the warehouse one hair that was later tested that was Lacey's. It matched her DNA, and it was in a rusty pair of pliers. That could look very, very suspicious. Sure, I'm sure it did, and I'm sure that was the one piece of evidence they went into court with. The defense explained it away as, well, of course, she's been to that warehouse before, which she had been. There are witnesses that say they saw Lacey at the warehouse. And even if she hadn't, Scott probably had her hair somewhere, her hair strands, if she'd hugged him or anything, on his clothing. I'm running out of time, so you're just going to have to come back for another part tomorrow.